Welcome to the Angler's Den Ep.004, discussing Lake Murray and the College Open. So, starting off, kind of going into the tournament, both Dalton and I were really looking at fishing ditches, brush piles, and kind of understanding that water temp's going to be anywhere from 48 to 52, 53 degrees. So we knew that these fish, last week, it was super cold, so they were pushed offshore really heavily. And going into the tournament, we look and there's just a warming trend: warmer nights, warmer days, warmer nights, warmer days. So these fish have to start pulling up into these staging areas. And I think that was kind of our biggest key to going into the tournament. And some top baits. Dalton, wouldn't you say is this single swimmer was one of our biggest baits?
Yep, that was one of the only baits that we actually got. But before going down there, we planned on throwing a single swimmer, a jig, jerk bait, and a drop shot, maybe a little bit of a Carolina rig and that other kind of stuff. But mainly those first four were the main baits that we were going to throw down there. And the only one that never really played at all was a jerk bait. That one went away fast. We'd throw it over a brush pile or whatever, and not one would look at it or even attempt to come look at it. So we're like, that's weird. And then we started noticing that every time we'd throw a jerkbait in there, nothing happened, but we'd throw a single swimmer in there and we get a few of them to follow. So we're like, this is not the deal. Let's stop doing this. Let's put it away for right now. And we did. And I think that was the right move looking back at it. But then we got in the first day of practice. Well, we drove through all that crap. We had to drive through the night and through an ice storm and stuff. And we get down there, and the boat was at a buddy of ours' house, Lucas Murphy. Huge shout out to him. He really saved us by letting us drop the boat off there on our way back from Toho, because there was a snowstorm on the way back from Toho, so didn't have to drive the boat through the snowstorm. And then on the way back down to Murray, we didn't have to pick or drive the boat through the ice storm that we had to drive through. So that was really nice. So we get there at to his house at 5 something in the morning. And then we picked up the boat, drove over to a boat ramp, slept for a few hours. Not even a few hours. The one old guy woke us up at the boat ramp because we were parked like doofuses, and he let us know. And then that's when we got up, went out fishing, and Dylan backed me in the water, and I'm just sitting there at the ramp waiting for him to park the truck, come back down, and I put the trolling motor in the water, and it's not working at all, really. I'm like, this isn't good. And
the thing is I've never seen a Minn Kota Ultrex ever do this. Every time you would pan around with the Ultrex, it worked totally as it should. But then the second you hit the engage button to move forward, it would lock it up and it would put it into north.
And then it wouldn't move.
Even
when you left it in north, even then it wouldn't try and turn northbound. It would just not do anything.
Yeah.
So we had Minn Kota mechanic Dylan. He really saved the day. We undid the whole foot pedal, and we got to the control board, and we just kind of kept messing around with it, and nothing would happen. And he noticed some corrosion with all the connections around the control board, and just kind of cleaned all that off, put it back together, and it worked 100% fine the rest of the week.
Yep. And I also his trolling motor has no more northbound or whatever it's called, because it kept glitching into it. So I just there's no more of that, and clean out the corrosion. So trolling motor's back.
Yeah,
back to working.
But we can't use northbound, which I think is what really screwed us in the tournament. If I had to imagine, it's a really screw. I'm just playing, but no, that was honestly a very clutch move by Dylan, and we got kind of our first day of practice a little bit. Caught a few fish, a limit for about 12 pounds, running our stuff, or not our stuff, but just kind of going around, seeing how these fish are acting. Caught about 11, 12 pounds, which wasn't the best day. Some of the kids on the team I know caught over 15, but we're okay, we're seeing what we want to be seeing, just not the size yet. So we're running back to the ramp, and I hear my alarm go beep, 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 and on my motor that means low oil. I'm like, oh gosh. And checked, there's plenty of oil in the boat, and I knew there was. I don't even know why I checked, But then I pulled off the cowling, and I thought it was low in the oil reservoir under the cowling. I'm like, no, let's fill it up. And you loosen the cap a little bit, and it's a pressurized system, so when it's loose, it should allow it to fill up. And I loosened it, ran the motor, and for like 5-10 minutes, and it didn't do anything. So I'm like, oh, that's not good. Get back that night, kind of freaked out. I don't know who towed us in. Someone did. Thank you very much. I think it's from Emmanuel. Yeah, I think it was from Emmanuel.
So
they never
huge
told
shout out
us
to them boys.
Yep, they never told us their names. So huge shout out to you guys. Get back there. I did some research. Couldn't really find very much on YouTube like I did, but nothing that seemed right in like what was happening with me. So I'm like, then I put a post on Facebook. I had a few buddies call. Thank you guys for calling and texting and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate it. But none of that worked, which I'll get into here in a second. Go back out the next morning. We're out there for like 2 hours trying to just figure it out ourselves, running the stuff that these guys told us.
Running a bunch of troubleshooting ideas, and
nothing worked.
Nothing.
So I called. Lucas Murphy told me to call the boat doctor, which is in, I think, Gilbert, South Carolina. That's just outside of Columbia. Drove the boat over there. Thank you guys for getting me in so much. They literally told us that for any big tournament that comes into town, they leave like an open schedule for that because they know it's a tournament and things go wrong. So
if you're ever in South Carolina,
you
have a tournament on Lake Murray and you're running into issues,
call them.
Yeah, call them.
They're the nicest people. They know what they're doing, and very reasonably priced, in my opinion. Like, if not cheap for whatever reason. I don't know why they necessarily be cheap, but we take it there, and I have a little oil filter between my actual like oil reservoir and the one that's in the motor, and that whole filter, it's like only about that big, and it's a piece of plastic, and it got so gunked up that it just wouldn't allow my motor to pump oil anymore. So they put a new one in. They told me that when I get back, I have to work on the whole thing, which I'm about to do this weekend, I think, or at least start on it. And back on the water that day, Dylan and I were feeling good. We were
Lots
playing
of highs and lows.
Yeah.
This week, like, get there, we're feeling a high. Trolling motor problems, low. Fishing, high. And then, like, it was just, we just kept,
motor problems.
We just kept riding this roller coaster all week. And then, like, you know, day 2, once we dropped off the boat, and me and Dalton are sitting there at the Waffle House, and we're like, man.
We didn't know if we were going to fish.
Yeah, I'm like, tournament starts in a day and a half. We really haven't practiced. Like, you can say we practiced the day before, we really haven't practiced. And I'm like, and we're a day and a half away from this tournament. Like, this is messed up.
It's not looking good.
Yeah,
is what we were thinking.
So they get us in. We get our phone call. Sweet. We get back on the water around like 3:00, and
jam some Soak City.
Yeah, and then from like 3 to like 5:30, I think we pushed it to. We just fished, and we caught only one bass that day. But we found a little section of the lake that was like, hey, all right, there's the right looking brush on the right section, like on the right stuff,
and it's loaded.
It's loaded. And the thing when we're saying it's the right stuff is so, like, off the main lake there's off the main lake there's little creek arms, and we're not going deep into the creek arms because these fish are still out very main lake. So, and it's like you have your main ditch that's like 50, 60 feet deep, coming in, and then the brush pile is sitting around like, and you're between 25 to like 15 feet of water, and they have to be tall brush piles
and big. Like, they can't just be like a cane pile like on Hartwell where it just stands straight up and there's like not much. Like, it has to have like brush, like limbs, branches, all kinds of stuff on it. And we found a few of those, and I mean, we only caught one of the fish out of one of like the 3 we found. So,
and that was pretty much a wrap on day 2 of practice.
Yep.
So, like, haven't really had a chance to explore Lake Murray.
And then we get back to the house that night, and we heard that 2 of our teams didn't catch one bass all day. And they had all day to practice. I'm not trying to like make fun of them. I'm just saying it was a tough day out there, and we're like, oh gosh, we're running off like 6 hours of practice. Like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
We go back out the next day, and I think we had a limit for about 12, 13 pounds by 10.
Yeah, by 10 in the morning. And it was like, we're like, finally, all right.
And we finally found exactly what to look for, too, I think.
Mm-hmm. And the thing was just like, especially like that day, it was like, we had to be off the water by 1 o'clock, and you're only allowed to get on the water by like blast off 7:30 or whatever it was.
So sunlight.
So like from 7:30 to 1 o'clock is really like our first kind of full day of practice. So like Dalton and I right away made a key move saying like, all right, we know what we need to look for. We don't have time to like check brush piles and see if there's fish in them. We just got to find as many brush piles as we can. So Dalton and I, right away, every point would side image. Side image the point. If there's nothing on the point or no big brush, whatever waypoint, if there is, and just keep moving. And we just like, we did that for as much as we could. We had to check areas, obviously, and make sure like different sections of the lake had fish. But we knew that that was the key. And the problem is like, if you ever been to Lake Murray or any of the South Carolina lakes, there's a lot of points, there's a lot of brush, and it's really hard to narrow such a huge, vast lake down to a little section where you could really break it down. So we were able to, I'm guessing 25 to 30 brush piles we were able to find that were like the right looking ones, like tall ones. You could see the shadow on the side imaging. Yep. So we're like, all right, perfect. We got that. We fished a couple little areas. We found one little grass spot, and we were like, me and Dalton were both like, you know what, like.
And you caught a good one in the grass spot too. So we had diverse stuff. It wasn't just running brush, running grass, running anything. It was like we could bounce around, do different things all day, and scramble and just get the job done.
Put something together.
Yep.
And so day one of the tournament, I mean, we both woke up feeling great. It was like people were saying that day one of the tournament was supposed to get canceled due to
the fog. It
lifted enough where we could run. So
thankfully.
Thankfully. And then we start off our morning fishing for anybody that's curious. You know, Draher Island. South of it, if you could look on a map, and there's a bunch of these little islands. And we started fishing some of the islands day one, and we're like, you know, it's just not looking right. And then like, you know, we started fishing a couple of them, and bouncing from waypoint to waypoint, brush pile to brush pile, and we're like, you know, it's just not setting up exactly how we want.
The fish weren't acting right. Like the fish were there, they just weren't acting right. Mm-hmm. And I just think that they only last like an hour max at times, and it just wasn't right. So we're like, all right, let's go to where we caught a couple fish. Or I don't even think we caught a couple fish. It's just on day one of practice, we rolled up on a spot and we saw a lot of good ones. And I told Dylan, I was like, I like this spot. Mm-hmm. And we rolled up and they instantly started schooling. Like, I don't know what on. There's no herring, there's no shad, there's no anything like skipping across the top of the water like you would think you would be able to see when they're schooling. They're just going crazy. I mean, I'm not going to argue it. They were just doing it. Now, at first we thought they were white bass or stripers or whatever. And we like cast at them, didn't get bit the first cast, and we're like, what the heck? They're still going. We're like, oh gosh, that was a 4-pounder. Oh my gosh, that was another 4-pounder. I throw my single swimmer in there, and I get like a measly 2.5. We're like, okay, that's cool. Start the morning off with
Dalton's taking care of that fish, and I'm casting, and I can't get one to go. And it's like, man, like if like day one we had another 4 or 1 or 2 more 4-pounders to our bag, like we're looking at like sitting in that top 10 spot. So
we had over 20.
Yep. And they stopped schooling, and then me and Dalton are like, man, we were only able to get a measly 2.5-pounder out of that school. Like, that's a little frustrating. So Dalton,
you got a wind knot, and you were retying. So I didn't want to run while he was retying, because like that was kind of like the spot.
Yeah.
And we're like, I didn't want to run while he was retying. So I'm like, you retie, you tie on it later. I'll just fish around. And which was actually just a blessing in disguise that Dylan got a wind knot throughout all that schooling, because they kind of went out deep, I'm assuming. I don't know where they went. And then there's a deep brush pile there, and I think those are the fish were on that, and they just pushed up to school, like, coincidentally at the same time we pulled up, or I don't know if the motor fired them up or something, but something fired them up. And I'm assuming they went back out deep, and there was nothing in the brush pile, like, when I first saw it, but then, like, 30 feet past it on my live scope, I can see, like, 5 fish moving in. Like, I haven't been able to catch one of these things all week long, and then when I have, they've all been hybrids every time. Yep. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue it. I have nothing better to cast at. Let's cast at it real quick. Cast at it, and they all like come up and look at it. I'm like, okay, like I'm working with that. I like it. One eats it, set the hook, and I miss him. Like, oh my gosh, god dang it. Dylan's like, did you get bit? I was like, yeah, I got bit. I just kept reeling, and then it loaded up, and I thought it was a hybrid at first. It was not. It never came up. It just wanted to run as hard as it could and go down. Like, this does not feel like a bass. It's not acting like a bass. And what I cast that, they were like in a school, like the stripers or I guess hybrids were all week long. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this is not a good sign. I'm like, I think it's a hybrid, dude. I think it's a hybrid. I'm fighting it for like a minute, and it comes up. I'm like, it's not a hybrid. It's not a hybrid. And we got in the boat, and it was a
4-pounder.
It was 4 something, and we were hyped. We're like, cool.
We got one of the right bites.
Yep. And then where did we run after that?
We ran to that brush pile where you caught that 3.5 pounder during practice. When we got the boat fixed, that 2.5 hours, that brush pile, we ran over to it, and that is north of the dam, a little bit northwest of the dam.
Yep, it's if you know where that Hilton Creek
boat ramp
is, it's right in that general area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I lost one in that brush pile there, which was what was thankful was it didn't really set the tone for that day. I was losing that one because we knew that it was going to be a big one, and we lost it. We're like, okay, whatever. They're loaded here. We'll come back later. There's a couple other boats there, so we didn't ever fish that again, or at least there are the other areas we had over there. So we're like, let's go to the grass spot, and I'll let Dylan talk about this.
Yeah, and so we rolled up to the grass spot, and just like day one when we found the grass spot, cast my jig, see him on live scope swimming through the grass. I'm like, man, he should be eating any second now. Wadonk, crack him, like 2 3/4.
And it was like the ugliest bass you could ever imagine.
The ugliest bass it had like weird white like mold slime. It was black, like it was like a zombie bass. And we were like, all right, well, we have a 2.5 pounder, a 2 3/4, and a 4 pounder in our live well. We're like, not bad. We're 2 more bites away. So after that, it got very slow.
Well, no, right after that, I lost another good one because we found a brush pile in that area.
Yeah.
And I lost like another one that I'm assuming it was like 4 pounder. So again, luckily that did not set the tone for us. We're like, we have a million more waypoints. We still got to run. Let's go. And that's what we did. And I don't remember exactly where we scrambled up, but we scrambled one up over by the island somewhere, right?
Yeah. So the thing was
where Easton Fothergill ran?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It was that point. So we caught like the fish near the islands, but it was on a point very close to a back pocket where these fish are kind of staging.
Yep.
And that fish clued us into, all right, these fish are getting ready. They're starting to stage up. They're not hanging out at those islands where those main lake herring eaters could pull up on. They weren't really doing that. The more cooperative fish were hanging out, like staging, ready to go into these back areas to spawn. And so we caught, I believe it was like another 2.5 pounder.
Yep.
And then we had like 4 fish. And then, 3 2.5 pounders and then a 4 pounder. We're like, not bad, not bad at all. So we kept bouncing around. I think it was a very big lull.
There was, but that was a part of that window.
Yeah.
Was the thing like I was just talking about. Like there was a window from like, all this was before 10 o'clock. You have to remember that. It was all before 10 o'clock. And from like 10 till like noonish, 12:30, it was dead. Like no bites, no fish wanted to act right. We're running around like a chicken with our heads cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And then where we caught that one, we think we ran back there just because like that was the only spot that they acted right. And I think
in the grass spot.
No, I think that's the time Easton Fothergill ran us over because I don't remember because the sun was out. I don't know. And then around 12:30 we did go back to the grass spot.
Yeah.
And Dylan, I'll let him explain.
Yeah,
what
and
happened.
it was funny. Like the whole time we're running there, in my head I'm like, we're gonna catch a 4 pounder here. Like we're going to. And like we put down and I'm like, yo, don't. We're gonna catch a freaking 4 pounder here, and it's all on camera too, which is sweet. I'm like, we're gonna catch a 4 pounder here, and it's gonna be freaking awesome. And we're fishing. Like 5 minutes later, wadonk, crack the joker, get him in the boat, 4.5 pounder, and we're like, let's freaking go. Our scale says 16 pounds, and it's like, you're like, we thought how tough the week was going to be. We thought that 16 pounds was gonna put us like really close to that cut line. And we ended up fishing that brush pile that was right next to the grass spot.
Gone.
All those fish that were loaded up in that brush pile were just gone. There's like maybe one or two fish in there. Did not look right. And in the grass, after I caught that fish, we were able to see throughout the day fish swimming in that grass, and we kind of stopped seeing that. So that was right away a pretty big issue.
That was our cue to go.
Yeah. So we definitely didn't overstay our welcome. We got what we needed, and then we started bouncing around. And we were like, all right, let's not make any more far runs. We're kind of getting closer to our tail end of our day. Let's start bouncing around closer to the ramp.
Practice a little bit for tomorrow, too, is what we started thinking.
We're like, we have 16 pounds. Like, even if we only end up with 16 pounds, we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot. Like, let's start practicing for the next day because we didn't have that much to run off of because of our shortened practice. So we started bouncing around, and we found a little area, which happened to be an area where one of our teammates, Billy and Davis, ended up qualifying and catching all their fish off of. Well, not the exact spot, but that section of the lake. So clearly it was a very productive section of the lake. Bounced around, found a couple brush piles.
Caught a 3-something off one.
Yep, and caught like a 3-something to get us up to that 17, 10-pound mark, and that was pretty much the end of our day.
We caught like one more fish that didn't help us, and then went back to weigh in, and we saw our teammates Billy and Davis weighed in
18-15.
Yep, and we were hyped. We're like, they just took the lead, which it was early, but they held the lead for a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Like till like right before we went up, and we're like, that's cool, that's awesome. Like they were sitting just in there, just outside the top 10.
They were sitting in 13th after day one, and the awesome thing was like the SMC boys, they're like, we had one team in 13th, we were sitting in 26th. We had another team sitting in 44th. And we're like, 3 teams in the top 50. Like, that's not bad. Not bad at all. Yep. Especially for, like, a small program. It's not no Montevallo, but for a program like ours, we're all, very young. We're all pretty much freshmen for the most part, freshmen or sophomores. And we're just kind of getting used to, like, fishing all these big bodies of water and, breaking it all down. And, we were hyped. We were super happy. That was pretty much a wrap on day one.
Yep.
Day two.
No, we went back to the house that night, and Dylan and I were both sat down and had a nice talk, and we're like, tomorrow we could definitely make it happen. We were both confident that we could catch 20 pounds. Like we saw the fish day one to do it, and we just didn't necessarily, I don't want to say we didn't execute or capitalize, but we had the opportunities, lost a couple opportunities, and we're like, those opportunities are still there. We're going to go do it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then day 2 started, and nothing was right.
Yeah, things just kind of went downhill like fairly quick. Looking back at it, like in the moment, like we stayed pretty mentally positive. Like, so first thing in the morning, we run to our area where we had the fish schooling because we were like, they might do it again. They might not. Either way, we have this deeper brush pile that we could possibly catch some fish off of. So we're not only relying on them schooling fish. Just
nothing was there.
Nothing.
Like, it was bare. Like, I don't know how that spot was bare. And then we ran to a couple areas, like, by it, still bare. We're like, okay, let's go to the loaded brush pile. We go to that loaded brush pile. Some old dude's trying to pull up on it. We pull up on it anyways, just because, I don't know. I guess his fun fishing wasn't as important as my tournament. That's what I was thinking at the time. So, sorry for doing that to you if you're listening. And they were there. Didn't want to do anything. And we ran to the next brush pile that's like right next to it. Like there's two. This was in a ditch, and then here's the point. If you can imagine. We ran to the point over here, and I lost like 4 or 5 pounder out of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was a good one. Didn't really freak out or anything.
Yep, we were like, hey,
it's whatever.
It's fine. It's still early in the day. It's still like 8 or 9 in the morning. So we're like, we have plenty of time to get more bites and, really capitalize.
Right.
Ran over to...
Then we went to the shallow brush pile right there. They weren't right, so we were like, okay, go to the grass spot. Went to the grass spot.
And they, like, you're panning around on live scope, and you're just seeing like one fish cruising in the grass, and then like you're panning around, you're just not seeing the clumps of grass, like the fish setting up in the clumps of grass. You're not seeing fish cruising in the grass. We were like, all right, this is very, very weird. So then we checked the brush pile out, and the brush pile looked amazing. But
They didn't want to do anything.
But they didn't want to follow. They didn't want to. They just didn't.
They didn't
care.
want to follow a jig down. They didn't want to do any. I mean, the first day I threw my underspin over there, and that's why I lost the big one on the first day. I'm like, oh, all right, let's throw. And then after that, I lost the big one. I was like, I'm gonna pull up my glide bait and I'm gonna throw it over there. Threw my glide bait over there, and I think I had about 3 or 4 fish around the 4-pound mark come screaming up out of like the brush pile, and I thought one of them was definitely gonna eat the heck out of my glide bait. And they just never did. Like I didn't even twitch my glide bait once. It hit the water, and they just came screaming up. So I'm like, come on, one's got to do it. And I'm like trying to like make it act like a bait fish that's trying to run from it, and they didn't. They followed it. They just wouldn't do anything with it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Tried that again day 2. They could have cared less. I mean, imagine like, I think Dylan had the best reference. He's like, imagine you're so full where you're like, I can't even imagine eating more food, and then someone puts a plate of food in front of you, and you're like, you're not gonna want to eat it. And I think that was probably the best reference that whole spot could have been. So,
So we, like I said, we didn't overstay our welcome, and we bounced.
Yep.
And we went over to that directly south of Dreher Island, that whole section of the lake down there. And the water was a little bit dirtier, in which we believed, hey, maybe with the water being a little bit stingier, they're going to be a little bit more cooperative. They're going to be a little bit more calm. They're not going to be as particular to what's going on and what we're throwing. And
they were.
That's kind of exactly what they did.
Yep.
And
you lost one.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Like like in the video, I literally set the hook, and I mean I'm fighting the fish. Dalton had enough time to reel in his line, put the rod down, grab the net out of the compartment, take it out, and it came off, and we're like, oh, that's like
whatever. At that time, we were still like whatever.
Yeah, but we're like, hey, 3 fish down. It didn't even sit really like what the heck. So we're like, we still have plenty of time. Ran over to another spot, and then Dalton loses one. And then we were like... Oh.
Then we're like... We started like freaking out a little bit. We're like, are our hooks okay? What the heck? We're like overthinking things. Like we listened to Brandon Paul like on the way back yesterday, and he's like, when he did that, he starts overthinking this. He's like, is my boat the wrong color? Like joking about it, but like that's honestly what you do think. Like your head goes crazy. Like, is it this? Is it this? Is it that? And then honestly, like when you're using Gamakatsu hooks and I mean the proper rods, the drag isn't too tight. I mean.
You take a step back and you're like, hey, I've caught hundreds of fish on this same setup, on the same rod, on the same reel, same line, same fresh line,
same
everything.
Hook, same. I mean, yeah.
So it's like, all right, I know for a fact I'm using the right gear. I know for a fact. So
kept going.
Ran to another spot, and we lost another one. And I think like by that time of the day, it was like pouring rain.
Yep.
And then so like we couldn't really record. Lost one, and we're like, oh. And then that's when like the negative thoughts start creeping in, especially on like Lake Murray where you got 7 to 8 bites a day. The negative thoughts start creeping in a little bit. And both me and Dalton are like, we're not talking as much. We're just both kind of like
zoned in.
We're locked in. We're like, all right, like if we
gotta get one of these in the boat for sure. We like soon.
So kept bouncing around.
We went to the point right over and caught a 4-pounder.
Yep, finally hooked one, and Dalton gets it up. The second I go down to net it, here comes the bait flying out. The fish is in the net. We're like, oh my god, thank goodness. And then I weigh it, 4-pounder. We're like.
Then the day switched around. Those negative thoughts were gone.
Yep.
Because what we started to realize then was anything. So if you look at a map of Lake Murray and you like look in like the middle, there's a big point on the south end of the lake, about halfway down it from Dreher, and like in between Dreher and the dam, and anything to the east of that on the dam side, where it's a little bit clearer water. Dylan and I were like, it's not happening there.
Mm-hmm.
For at least for us. Like I don't know where some of these kids caught them, but at least for us, it was not happening there. So we're like, we knew the rest of the day. Let's zone in on this Dreher Island area, part of like where the water's a little bit stingier colored. And And we just started going. Literally every point we see, bam, 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 we're going. And we're finding good stuff. Like we caught that 4-pounder. And we're like, okay, cool. Then we go to a brush. Then we like head out or down the point a little bit more. And there's another brush pile. Actually,
I'm pretty sure
that's a little bit later. But we go down. Then we're like, go down. We see Billy and Davis. We're like, yeah, we have 15 pounds. We're like, sweet, it's happened in this area. We're going. And we go down to another point. Dylan loses one out of this. I mean, a big brush pile. We're like, oh gosh, how does it keep happening? We go down to the next one. Guess what happens again? Dylan loses another one out of that. Right. Okay, we're doing the right things now. We have a 4-pounder box. We're doing the right things. We have 4 hours. I think 3 hours at that time.
Yep.
We need 4 fish. Like, let's keep doing this. Any point, it could happen. Mm-hmm. All we need to do is literally hit 4 more of these right points at the right time. And honestly, if we rotated those spots, like we could have came back and caught another one or something. Like, we were confident. Ran around, nothing, and then we ran around for a little bit with nothing.
For like almost like an hour and a half.
Yep, and then we go back to where I caught that 4-pounder, and this is where the days got dark. It's about 2 hours left of the tournament at this point. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say? Okay, and I throw back in there and reeling it, and I'm seeing like 2 of them follow it on the scope, and it goes tick. And I'm like, let it load up. And, jacked him. I'm like, oh, here he comes. Gone. I'm like, I might have said a couple of choice words.
Yeah. Right there and then, it's like.
That's where the day turned dark. We're like, we just don't know what to do.
We have lost. I can't even like
6. So we like
6. I believe it was 6 or 7 fish we lost total that day.
And Lake Murray's at least the pattern we were what we were on Lake Murray that time of year. We knew we were only going to get about 7-8 bites a day, which was unfortunate because we lost 6 out of the 7 bites we had. Mm-hmm. So we're like, oh gosh, we don't even know what to do at this point. And we just kept doing what we did. We're like, it's working. Let's keep doing it. And we kept going. And dang it, these people won't shut up, will they? And kept going, and nothing. We just hit every spot about 5 times at this point. Like every point that we had with brush, we just kept running. Like, can this brush pile just please spit one out? Can this one just please spit one out? And then I think the last out of the tournament, we just kind of were like, oh gosh, we can't run the same spot over and over again. So we started to fish a lot of rock at that point in time. Couple points with rock, trying to slow down, drag a jig, and it just was not happening.
Yeah, and especially like come that time of day, like, you got like an hour and a half to wait. It's like about 3:00, and it's just like, right there and then. It's like, it's one thing to be like,
we never gave up.
Yeah, the thing is, like, we never gave up. Like, we fished until the freaking last minute we possibly could. Like, we kept making adjustments. And it's just like, but it's so hard. And for all you tournament anglers out there that know when you have one of those types of days, there's that dark thought in your head, and it's just like, you fucking blew it.
And you just can't shake it.
And it's just like, like when you had it a little bit earlier, but it's not as strong. It's just there, and then you catch that 4-pounder and it's gone. And it's gone. And all the hope, all the confidence.
It literally went away like the second that thing got in the net. We're like, oh my gosh, it's happening. We said 20 pounds, and
one of the 5 bite that you need, we just got.
Exactly.
So we're like 4 more left. And come 3:00, it got really dark in the boat. Like, yep. I am always, like, Dalton and I, every term that we've ever fished, we've always made, like, last-minute, like, adjustments. And especially, like, whether it was, like, Harris Channel Lakes, where me and you literally had 7 pounds until the last hour and called up to, like, 12.5, at least to prove that we aren't complete jackasses.
Yeah.
And then Gunnersville, like, we made the right adjustment and caught that 4.5 within the last hour of the day for us to qualify for the national championship.
Toho.
Yup. Like, the last 2 hours of day 2, like, we started just running new stuff, and, we're always...
Started clicking.
We're always, like, making sure that, like, we can give it our 100%. and with a positive mindset. And
that last hour when you just have seen every single inch of water that you're running 2 or 3 times,
and especially like
what can you do?
And you had the winning, or not
It
the
wasn't
winning,
even that.
When you had enough weight between all
qualify,
those fish
just
to
to qualify.
qualify, and it's all slipping away, and you just look at the time, and then you're fishing, you look at the time, you're like, it's just draining way too quick, and it's just...
The one thing that really got to me was like when we were fishing and it's that last hour, I'm like, I would love to run back down to this point where I caught the 4-pounder and lost another one, but it's like I already fished it 4 times today. There's a boat that's been sitting on it for the past hour. It's not going to happen there. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't even think. My only thought was, let's run this rock, like this shallower rock on this point. Let's see if there's something active eating on it. That was the only thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, let's just do it. If we can catch 2 or 3 like active fish on it, you know what? We're gonna do our best to catch one more if we were to catch 3 fish.
Yep.
And, like, even if it was only gonna be 12 pounds, it's like, okay, it's 12 pounds. It's better than 4. And it just never happened. And it was foggy, and which limited us to, it was very, very foggy. So, and it limited us to what we wanted to fish. Dylan was like, let's go to this point. And I'm like, that's not a good idea because it's right in the mouth of that main creek right when weigh-ins is going on. I'm like, there's already one very unfortunate accident, which we're praying everybody is okay and will recover just fine.
Yep.
And we're like, let's not be the cause of another one. So I was like, let's not run that spot. Let's go somewhere a little bit more protected where there's going to be less boats running constantly. And we did. And there wasn't anything there. I mean, it was just a point, and there's just no brush, no nothing. And we're like, got our teeth kicked in today. Hopefully Billy and Davis are going to qualify, is what we were thinking at that time. Like, Hopefully they have enough to get in. I mean, they had plenty, so absolutely big congratulations to them. Those guys have worked very hard over the past year, and it's very awesome to see them get the job done. They did a great job this week, and they deserved it very, very much. So, and especially
it's really awesome to see like them grow as anglers and also as our buds, you know. Yep. And we always try to help each other out as much as we can at these events, you know. Obviously not give like waypoints, but like, hey man, like I'm doing this with this bait, like you should probably try to do something like that if your game plan's not working out, vice versa. And
they really helped us out with not having a full practice, or they were really keyed us into like, we're getting bit on that single swimmer underspin type deal a lot. And we're like, sweet, thank you guys. And like, they never gave us like what they're running. They just like, this is one of the only baits we're getting bit on at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it really keyed us into like, hey, let's not really put too much weight into this jerk bait. Let's not put too much weight into the drop shot, because like at the end of the day, they weren't working that well.
Not even a little bit. And the funny thing is like, we're like, all right, like if things get tough, like the drop shot will catch them. We caught like 1 or 2 bass all week.
Exactly. So they really did help us out too at the end of the day. So big thank you to them. And
yeah, that's pretty much a wrap on Lake Murray.
I honestly think that's one of my favorite lakes I've ever been to. Obviously the result doesn't show it,
mm-hmm.
but I mean there's not very many places in the country that you can go and you're gonna set the hook, and if it's under 3 pounds, you're a little surprised.
Yeah,
like there's not very many places like that.
The smallest fish we caught this week was 2.5 pounder.
Exactly. So it's like you're not fishing for a bunch of bites like you are on Gunnersville. But what's different is on Gunnersville, you are going to have those 1 pounders, those not even 1 pounders. On Murray, it's not that way. So It was a very fun lake to fish and break down. And also about Lake Murray is, I mean, we're standing in the weighing lines, and this one kid from Kentucky Christian, we don't know who he was, and he's just sitting there talking to us how he's going down the bank, and he caught a 6.5 pounder. It's like, we never did that, but like you can just go out there and do whatever the heck you want, and you're going to catch quality fish. Like, it's not like you have to be fishing offshore brush to win a tournament. You can literally win a tournament doing whatever you want, pretty much. I mean, within reason out there.
And it seemed like a lot of teams, you know, really fished their confident style. And that's especially like when you travel and you get an opportunity to fish so many different various bodies of water. For a fishery to be so diverse, where you could go up shallow, go out deep, fish brush, fish grass, like it is truly a special fishery. And I mean, I just want to give a huge shout out to, like, Visit Columbia and
Lake Murray. The
Yeah,
biggest
Lake
shout out to
Murray.
the boat doctor, honestly. They really saved our butts that week, allowed us to fish, and got us on the water with as quick as you could ever ask.
Mhm.
So, big shout out to them. It was just, I mean, I'm not the most religious person by any means, but I've always believed in God, and when God has a plan for everyone, and His plan was this week, let's make sure you're going to be mentally stable through all the problems. And I think me and Dylan did. We stayed very mentally stable.
Mhm.
And I think it just made us more hungry, put a chip on the shoulder for when God does plan it on it being our time. So
Oh yeah,
very thankful for the blessings and opportunities that He's given us to travel the country and do what we do. So
especially after this event, I mean, I am fired up to get ready to get after again. And I don't know. I think March is going to look like a pretty fun month, and then April is going to be out of this world.
Yep,
April, May, June
gonna
is
be
just
in-
going to be craziness.
we're going to be in Michigan, Indiana for what? So we'll be back the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. We'll be back for 4 days in April.
Yeah.
And we'll be that's going to be a blast.
Yeah, so I think, like, for anyone watching that cares, we're going to probably, the month of March, head over to Braidwood opener. That should be a good time. Film video, maybe do like a little 2v2. That'll be very,
Switch up some teams.
switch up some teams a little bit.
Haven't
Maybe
done that.
Dalton and I go against each other, see what happens, and then maybe Billy and Davis get a fish against each other. So that'll be a very exciting video to watch. Lakes should start opening up come that time of
They're
year.
going to open up next week with the freaking weather we're
Yeah,
having.
and lakes are starting to open up. Spring's right around the corner. We just got
Can't wait for it.
We just got to survive one more month.
I can
And,
only play Fortnite for a couple more times before I drive myself insane. So
just we got so much in store for everyone and for ourselves as well, and for everyone that's following along on our journey with just everything, with the amount of people that reached out and that supported that day one of the national championship. Huge shout out. That was actually incredible. That's actually our most viewed video, 500 views. Freaking awesome. Talked about the podcast on Toho. People that reached out, thank you. We appreciate it, and it keeps us going, and it makes us strive to be better and strive to put out more content to allow people to follow along with what we have in store. So with that being said, we got a lot coming, so be sure to look out for both of our Instagrams, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. Everything will be in the description below. Be sure to follow the Angler's Den on Spotify. And
you're not going to want to miss these spring videos, I don't think.
No.
Especially like these local Michigan lakes that are going to open up here soon. You're definitely not going to want to miss that.
Some people in the Michiana area are going to hate us for this, but
I don't care.
We're going to expose some awesome lakes for you guys to check out and fish.
What are those, torches or whatever? Just outside of the dorms, like, you're ruining my lake. That was my lake from 1987.
We're going to show everyone how truly special the Michiana area really is. And, you're definitely not going to want to miss that.
So be sure to keep on the lookout, and hopefully keep your guys' fingers crossed for some warm weather coming up so we can get back on the water.
And with that being said, see you guys later.
Peace.
Oh,